Welcome to this explainer. If you have ever felt that absolute gut-wrenching frustration of sitting in an IELTS listening test, hearing the audio just breeze right past you, and then realizing you've lost a crucial mark to a tricky phrase, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're not just going to tell you to listen harder. We are going to reveal the invisible mechanics of the IELTS listening test. We're going to crack the code on exactly how this test is built, how it deliberately tricks you, and most importantly, how you can take back control of your band score. Here's the game plan for our masterclass today. We'll be running through 1. The blueprint, 2. Anatomy of a distractor, 3. Unforced errors, 4. Task strategies, and finally, 5. The ultimate training plan. So, let's just get right to it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The blueprint. Vocabulary traps and synonyms. We absolutely have to start with the one fundamental rule of the IELTS listening test.
What you read on the page is almost never exactly what you're going to hear in the audio. Take a look at this incredibly simple but honestly lethal example. On your question paper, you might see the word accommodation, but in your headphones, the speaker casually drops the word housing. If you're sitting there frantically scanning the audio for the literal word accommodation, you are going to completely miss the connection. Under the intense high pressure of the exam clock, failing to link these two simple synonyms is one of the most common ways candidates just let easy points slip through their fingers.
And this synonym game, it actually scales up in difficulty as the test goes on. It's kind of like leveling up. In part 1, those everyday conversations, the synonyms are pretty simple. You might read cost but hear price while someone's booking a ticket. Easy enough. But then in part 2 monologues, an event becomes an occasion. By part 3, you're deep in an academic discussion where a research project is suddenly referred to as a study. And finally, in those dense academic lectures of part 4, broad concepts are swapped out entirely, like history becoming the past. You really have to train your brain to expect these shifts at literally every single level of the test.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Distractor, the Psychology of Spoken English.
I really want to shift your paradigm here. A lot of candidates feel like distractors, those moments where you hear an answer and then it suddenly changes, are unfair tricks. But they aren't. They are actually totally predictable patterns of natural spoken English. I mean, people change their minds in real life all the time, right? The test is really just measuring if you can follow that developing meaning to the very end. In fact, examiners use an exact formula to build these traps. Visually, it breaks down like this. Step 1 is the initial idea, something that sounds super tempting. Step 2 is a moment of doubt or a correction from the speaker. And step 3 is the final decision. If you know this 3-step formula, you can literally spot the trap forming in real time before it even happens.
Now, what's really interesting about this exact quote is how clearly it exposes the trap. Just read it with me. We originally planned to hold the conference in June, but it will now take place in July. Jumping at that very first familiar word, June, and quickly writing it down is a fatal error. The test is rewarding patience. It's actively rewarding the listener who holds their nerve and waits for the entire thought to resolve.
So, as your elite coach right now, my strict instruction to you is to hold your nerve. Keep your pencil hovering and wait for these specific contrast and confirmation signals. Words like actually, however, instead, or phrases like in fact and just to confirm. When we hear these signal words, alarms should be going off in your head. That is the examiner pointing a giant neon arrow directly at the real confirmed answer. Let the distractor go and grab the final truth.
Which brings us to Section 3, Unforced Errors, Common Test Day Mistakes. The hard truth here is when scores drop, the problem is rarely that your English is too weak. More often than not, you're losing marks through small, poor habits on test day that just compound over the 4 parts of the exam. So I want to ask you this directly. What do you think is the true cost of a single missed answer? Most people think, oh, it's just 1 point, but it's really not. A single missed detail isn't the real disaster. It's the chain reaction of panic that follows, which completely destroys your score.
Let's just pause here for a second. We call this the emotional freeze. Picture this. You miss question number 14. Instead of moving on, your brain just gets totally stuck. You start obsessing, mentally rewinding the audio, desperately trying to figure out what they said. Meanwhile, the recording is kept right on playing. Because you froze over question 14, you completely missed questions 15, 16, and 17. You sacrificed 3 marks because you couldn't let go of 1. You absolutely have to practice the art of letting go.
That emotional freeze is just one of many cascading failures. Look at these granular, incredibly painful mistakes. Reading instructions too late, so you have zero context. Ignoring word limits? I mean, if you write a red car, but the limit is 2 words, you lose the mark even if you heard it perfectly. No way, right? Missing a plural S on a noun, or totally failing to use the silent pauses in the audio to read ahead and predict the next section? These are all unforced errors. You have the right English but terrible test discipline. Let's transition into Section 4, Task Strategies, Rules for Specific Question Types. It is so vital to remember that standard gap fills are not the only danger on this test. The IELTS is going to throw several different formats at you, and every single question type demands a highly unique defensive strategy to survive it. Let's walk through them. For map labeling, your entire focus needs to be on tracking movement vocabulary, words like opposite, next to, or on your left. If you lose the directional language, you are completely lost on the map. For matching questions, you have to track who said what, keeping names, opinions, and role changes perfectly organized. And for multiple choice, just like we discussed, your strategy is pure patience. They will mention several options before deciding, so you must wait for the final confirmation.
I do want to briefly highlight matching tasks specifically because they trip so many people up. The key is to master the format. Remember, the instructions usually say to write the correct letter, A through G. Do not write the full phrase out, just the letter. You need to logically filter out the distractors, rely heavily on synonyms, and cross out the wrong options as you listen to systematically narrow down the truth.
And now we've arrived at Section 5, the ultimate training plan. Practice smarter, not harder.
Okay, let's pivot from theory to action. I want to give you a concrete, bulletproof way to fix these issues before exam day. Our core philosophy here is targeted repair, and this brilliantly illustrates why doing endless back-to-back mock tests is virtually useless if you are just blindly repeating the same mistakes. You don't need to do another 10 full tests. You need to do targeted repair on the exact specific errors that are tanking your score.
So, here is a highly actionable 3-step routine to do exactly that. Step 1. Listen with your eyes. This means reading ahead during the pauses so you can actively predict the vocabulary before the speaker even starts. Step 2. Build synonym pairs. Keep a dedicated notebook mapping the words you read to the words you hear and organize them from part 1 to 4. And Step 3. Use practice tools to simulate real exam pressure. You have to train your brain in those conditions so you don't succumb to the emotional freeze.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Take a hard look at your past mistakes and ask yourself, what is your real weakness? Is it a failure to predict synonyms? Is it sloppy spelling and missing that tiny plural S? Or is it the emotional freeze? Identify your exact flaw today. Apply the blueprint from this explainer and go finally take absolute control of your band score. You've totally got this.